Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the series documenting my journey to solo motherhood. My name is Cory Wiseman, and in this episode I'm going to tell you all about how I tried to make a baby all by myself with a whole team of helpers through intrauterine insemination or IUI procedures. After deciding in July 2019 that I wanted to pursue becoming a single mother by choice, I scheduled a consultation with my OBGYN in late August. She had me start taking folic acid, referred me to cryobiology, the sperm bank, and recommended that I get a blood test to check my CMV status, which turned out to be negative, meaning I should only select negative donors, which ruled out like half of them. My doctor also instructed me to purchase prenatal vitamins and an ovulation predictor kit. While I did get my period the following month, I didn't actually ovulate. It turns out when you've been on the birth control pill for 20 years, your body doesn't really know what to do right away once you cease taking it. For the following cycle, my doctor prescribed Femara, which is a pill to help with ovulation. I took one of these pills on cycles day 3 through 7 in October. Unfortunately, according to my ovulation predictor kit, I still did not ovulate, and this was confirmed with a blood test a couple of weeks later. In the meantime, I had begun sharing my decision with some family members and a few close friends. I was the most nervous to tell my parents. I drove up to their house on Labor Day weekend, and I rehearsed what I was going to say repeatedly during the 2-hour drive up there. Thankfully, they were both very supportive. My mom seemed a little more skeptical than my dad, and I think mostly she was just worried about me and didn't want to see me get hurt if things didn't work out. My dad was surprisingly really cool with it, and I later learned that when I had called them over to talk, my dad actually thought that I was going to tell them that I already was pregnant. If only. As it turns out, my dad actually had a colleague at his job with the FBI back in the 1990s who had also decided to become a single mother by choice. My dad recalled that she had brought in paper profiles of donors and asked for my dad's advice in choosing one. She since went on to have a daughter on her own who is in college now. My dad had lost touch with this woman after all these years, but he called the FBI office and found that she still worked there. So he was able to get in touch with her. She was delighted to hear from my dad and thrilled to hear about his daughter, me, considering solo motherhood. She and I actually met up at Dewey's Pizza in mid-September and had such a lovely time getting to know each other and bonding over this shared journey to motherhood. She was so sweet and excited for me and made me promise that I would invite her to my baby shower. I also shared the news with my sisters, their husbands, and my nieces and nephews. My 17-year-old niece Claire had the best reaction. When I told her that I wanted to have a baby by myself, she looked me in the eyes, smiled, and said, "I always thought you should do that." Also, during this time, while I was patiently waiting for my body to remember how to ovulate, I made several phone calls to my insurance company to find out what kind of fertility coverage I had. I also made lots of phone calls to cryobiology, and the staff there patiently answered all of my questions about the donors and the donation process. And I selected a sperm donor during this time. In case you missed it, I discussed my selection process in detail in episode 2. So, back to what was going on with my body. After not ovulating with the prescribed dosage of the Femara pills in October, my doctor doubled my dosage to 2 pills for the following cycle in November, and that did the trick. I finally ovulated, which meant we could start planning for my first insemination attempt for the following cycle. So in December, I again took 2 pills on cycles day 3 through 7. And then on cycle day 11, I had my very first follicle scan with my OBGYN. A follicle scan is an internal transvaginal ultrasound during which the doctor uses a wand called a transducer to look inside the uterus and measure follicles. Follicles are small sacs of fluid found on the outside layer of the ovaries, which contain immature eggs. When the time comes and the follicle has grown to the right size, it ruptures and releases a mature egg that's ready to be fertilized. My doctor measured the follicles in my ovaries and saw that one ovary had several follicles that weren't very large in size yet, and the other ovary had one big follicle that would probably be ready to release its egg in a couple of days. So, to prepare for the big egg release coming up in a couple days, I had to go to a special pharmacy to buy what's commonly referred to as a trigger shot. This costs about $100 out of pocket and is a hormone injection that helps to control ovulation by essentially making the follicle release a mature egg at a specific time, typically within a window of 24 to 40 hours after administration. Timing is everything, and I was due to take this trigger shot in the late morning of Wednesday, January 1st, 2020. Seeing as how that's New Year's Day, my doctor's office was closed. The trigger shot itself is an intramuscular injection with an 1.5-inch long needle, and it has to be administered in the lower back above the buttocks. The pharmacist talked me through how to prepare the syringe and administer the injection. Start with this needle, pull back 1 millimeter of air and then push it into the water solution, holding it upside down, I think he said, and then draw 1 millimeter of water. And then here, you're going to want to hold this upside down, put the 1 millimeter of water in here and roll it like this, so the powder mixes with the water, and then put the needle in here and draw back 1 cc of that, and then switch the needle because this one's a little bit fatter to the skinnier needle, and inject above the butt by the lower back, deep into the muscle. So the needle was super scary and the injection site was awkward to reach myself. This was not something I could do on my own. I reached out to a friend of mine who is a nurse and conveniently lives on the same block as me. She was very excited to learn that I was trying to conceive and was happy to help in any way possible. She stopped by my house that morning to give me the shot. Coincidentally, my best friend from college happened to be in town and was visiting me that morning. So she was in for a surprise when I told her just moments after her arrival that another friend was walking up to my front door to give me a shot because I was trying to make a baby. My college friend held my dog Charlie while my nurse friend gave me the shot on my living room couch. My sweet Charlie dog actually came over to me after watching me get the shot to check on me. He doesn't like shots either. My first insemination attempt would take place the next morning via intrauterine insemination, or IUI. During this simple low-tech procedure, the doctor slides a thin, flexible tube called a catheter through the cervix into the uterus. The doctor uses a small syringe to insert the sperm through the catheter directly into the uterus, helping them get closer to the egg. This cuts down on the time and distance the sperm has to travel, making it easier to fertilize the egg. An IUI is typically not painful and only takes a few minutes. Intrauterine insemination also has a terrible success rate. During my research, I found that depending on the source, the chance of success varies from about 7% to 17%. So the odds were not in my favor, and I knew it could take a few tries, but nevertheless, I was feeling optimistic and excited about my first time ever trying to make a baby. I should point out that while it was frustrating how long the process had taken thus far, remember I decided to do this in July 2019, here we are 6 months later in January 2020 before my first attempt to conceive. Though I was very grateful that this was now falling over my winter break, so I didn't have to worry about work on these days. That was huge because my job is very stressful, which is bad for conception, and has a very rigid schedule, and I really had to prioritize the strict timing of these fertility procedures. So on January 2nd, 2020, I went to cryobiology at 10:30 a.m. and picked up my guys. In exchange for $745, I was handed a long metal rod with an itty-bitty plastic tube of sperm at the bottom. Since the vial has been cryopreserved in liquid nitrogen, you shouldn't touch it. The CryoBio staff member also cautioned me not to spill it. So don't touch it and don't spill it while driving it across the town to the doctor's office. Got it. Fortunately, I was able to manage without touching or spilling on the drive to my 11 o'clock appointment that day. I felt really cool walking into the doctor's waiting room carrying a rod of sperm. Fortunately, it was her Powell location rather than her Upper Arlington location, so I was less likely to see anyone I know there. When it was my turn, I handed the liquid gold over to the woman who checked me in, and then I read a book while I waited for my doctor in the exam room. When my doctor entered, she said the sperm looked great. She had examined it under a microscope to ensure that it had good motility and that it had survived the freezing and thawing process. We did the IUI procedure at 11:30 a.m., and then the doctor left me to lay on my back for 10 minutes before heading about my day. Business as usual. Not really. There was nothing usual about this day. I could be pregnant, and that's all I thought about all day. And for the next 2 weeks. The 2-week wait. That's how long you have to wait before taking a pregnancy test. And even though my doctor said not to take a pregnancy test before then because the hormone in the trigger shot can give a false positive, it's just really hard to wait that long when you could have a baby growing inside of you. I cheated and took a pregnancy test after 11 days, 3 days early. And it was negative. Not even a false positive, just straight up negative. So I doubted it would turn positive in 3 more days. And by 5 a.m. on January 16th, it didn't. No baby. I also got my period on that day, so it was very much confirmed that there was no baby. At least I didn't have to wait very long to try again. For this next cycle, we got more aggressive and my doctor upped my dosage again to 3 Femara pills on cycles day 3 through 7. My follicle scan was scheduled for cycle day 12, January 27th, with a trigger shot to follow on January 30th, sometime between 3:10 and 3:30 p.m. This time, my doctor's office was open, so a nurse there administered the shot. My second IUI was scheduled 24 hours later on January 31st at 3:30 p.m. This time, when I went to pick up my guys at CryoBio, I brought a wine koozie along to transport them. This would help me with the no touching and no spilling I had been cautioned about the previous month. The brand name of the wine koozie is BYO, like bring your own wine. I joked that it was a BYOS, bring your own sperm party at my doctor's office. The nurses got a kick out of it. You guys, you have to have a sense of humor about this. IUI number 2 went smoothly and I was instructed to take a home pregnancy test in 2 weeks, on February 14th. Perhaps I would have a special little Valentine this year. Nope, I got my period the day before, on February 13th. For the next cycle, I continued with 3 Femara pills on days 3 through 7, a follicle scan on day 12, trigger shot on February 27th, and IUI number 3 scheduled for Friday the 28th. I arrived at 1:25 p.m. with the insemination scheduled for 1:50. The nurse who met me to get the sample ready asked why I was using donor sperm. She said sometimes a woman's partner has had cancer and they can't use his sperm, and she wondered if that was the case for me. I told her it was because I was single. She smiled and high-fived me. Since my doctor was out of town, another doctor in her practice performed the procedure that day. She was great too and said she hoped that the third try would be the charm. But it wasn't, because I got my period 2 days before I was due to take the pregnancy test. I'll tell you what though, these 2-week waits are hard. They mess with your head. I found myself getting really jinxy, like if I say or think or do or don't do something, then it means I'm pregnant or not. It just really consumes your thoughts, wondering if you have a new life beginning in your belly. I finally had to start being really strict and scolding myself when I would start to have these jinxy thoughts, and I would just tell myself, stop it, jinxes aren't real. My fourth and final IUI attempt took place in March 2020. You know what else took place in March 2020? The shutting down of the world due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. So this was an interesting month. I did manage to go through with the IUI, although it was kind of touch and go at times. I took 3 Femara pills on days 3 through 7, and fortunately my doctor's office was still open to do my follicle scan on March 20th, as well as to administer my trigger shot on March 23rd, and for the IUI on March 25th. Work-wise, I lucked out that the 20th fell over spring break, and since our spring break was extended due to the pandemic, I also did not have to work on the 23rd or 24th, so I didn't have to use sick leave or make sub-plans for the trigger shot or the IUI appointments. My doctor's office did stop IUI procedures the following month in April due to the pandemic, so I just squeaked this last one in. The sperm bank cryobiology planned to shut down completely on March 25th, and my IUI was scheduled on March 24th. As you know by now, timing is everything, and if it had fallen just a day later, I wouldn't have been able to get the sperm and the procedure would have been canceled. Here's an audio clip I recorded that morning.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, March 24th, 2020, and I am getting ready to try to go make a baby this morning. This will be my 4th IUI attempt, and I'm excited. I'm feeling positive about this one today. Our state is on kind of a lockdown situation right now because of this coronavirus that is spreading around the world. It's a pandemic, and teachers are working from home, so I have that flexibility today, and fortunately doctor's office is still open. So I'm going to go to not the sperm bank because it's closed because of the virus today, but the guy who works there is taking my sample across the street to their sister company, so I'm going to find that place today, pick up my sample, and take it to my doctor's office. My doctor won't be performing the IUI because of the virus. She's at the hospital today, but one of her partners will be doing the IUI, and really hoping it works. Want to have a baby. Okay, bye.
So on March 24th, I picked up my 4th vial of sperm and was trying so hard to be optimistic. I even gave it a pep talk in the parking lot before heading inside my doctor's office. Oh, and I might have slipped a fertility doll that my sister gave me back in the 90s from her African travels into my purse that day. Okay, maybe I was still a little bit jinxy. Since my doctor ended up having to work in the hospital that day because of a schedule change due to COVID, another doctor performed this IUI. This doctor was also great, so many great doctors, and she asked me if I had a partner. I thought it was nice of her to ask and not assume, but the reason she asked was because she was going to suggest that I have intercourse to try to maximize the odds of getting pregnant this month. When I told her this was my only chance for the month, she replied that the sperm looked great. When I elaborated and said that I was doing the single mother by choice thing, she said, "Good for you, that's badass." This 2-week wait was cut short when I got my period 12 days later. And now it's April 2020, 9 months after I decided to try to have a baby. And we're in the midst of a global pandemic and everything is shut down and people are dying and no one knows if this will be an apocalypse and what more can I do to bring a child into this world right now? Well, I decided I had had enough IUIs. The success rate is too low and it's too expensive, especially on a single income and when having to purchase donor sperm. Note, if you're part of a couple, then 2 incomes split the cost for this. And if one of the partners is male with good sperm, then there's no cost for that. So if that's the case, then it might be worth a few more tries, but not for me. If trying to conceive by IUI, there are pharmacy costs for fertility drugs, about $20. The trigger shot is around $100, and you can add $45 more if you go to the doctor's office for a nurse to inject you. The follicle scan is $375. The office visit for an IUI is around $178. So it's around $718 in medical costs and $745 for the vial of sperm. That totals around $1,463. Did I mention that IUI has a success rate of around 10%? Would you bet $1,463 on a racehorse that had a 10% chance of winning? Well, I did, 4 times, totaling $5,852 before calling an IVF doctor. Next up is episode 4, in which I will begin to document my IVF journey.